Welcome all again to the first session, first panel discussion of today. We have titled this Space Tech, Can India Be the New Superpower? So, the question itself is quite deep, and I don't think it requires any further description. It's a question on all our minds. To jump through and understand where we are in this global space race, I would like to invite a few experts and panelists from the industry. First, I would like to invite Srinath. Srinath Ravichandran, he's the co-founder and CEO of Agnikul Cosmos. He did his bachelor's in electrical engineering from College of Engineering, Guindy, and completed a master's degree in financial engineering from Columbia University and aerospace engineering from University of Illinois. Welcome, Srinath. Welcome to the panel.
Hi.
Our next speaker for today is Awais Ahmed. Awais Ahmed is the founder and CEO of Pixel. Awais was also one of the founding members and engineering lead at Hyperloop India. Awais, welcome on board.
Hi, Shrikant. Thanks for having me.
We have a third panelist who's unable to join instantly due to some technical issues. Neha, as soon as she joins, I will introduce. In the meantime, I think Awais and Srinath, let's get started. So you both are in the trenches. You are part of the Indian space tech, right? And space tech as such is a very exciting segment. It captures the imagination of children and adults alike. So being in the trenches, and I use the word trench in a very ironical sense, right? Because you're looking up into the space. What are the changes you're seeing in space tech globally at a sector level and in India? Otherwise, do you want to take a quick minute to walk me through what you're seeing at a high level?
Yeah. So I think the last decade really saw the resurgence of a whole lot of these space technology startups globally, which means that there were quite a few success stories that came out of there as well, which the rest of the world has looked to start their own space programs, and here in India as well. So I think globally we are reaching that point where everyone is realizing that space tech is not a fad; it's really the next frontier where a lot of applications and usages will come through. And the narrative is also changing from the spending towards space is a waste towards the usefulness that will actually come out of it, whether it's communication satellites, whether it's Earth observation satellites, and whatnot that you put in there. SpaceX paved the way for a whole lot of this when they are able to launch these rockets regularly and land them down. That gave confidence to a whole lot of others as to what could be done. When Planet Labs came in and launched more than 100 satellites at one go, that gave confidence to others that satellites could actually be done by a private company. It didn't require only governments or government-backed organizations like Lockheed or Northrop to actually do something in space. So I think that was very critical globally from a sector standpoint. And in India specifically, up until 2020, we were still in a regulatory limbo as to what needed to be done. But once there was an announcement and clear indication from the government that they want to help the private space sector grow, which is the only way for the whole ecosystem in the country to go as well, we have seen a whole lot of companies that were previously working on, really take off, pun intended, along with new ones that have come up after that as well, whether it is rockets that Agnikul builds, whether it's satellites that we here at Pixel build, whether it's debris space management that Digantra is doing. There's a whole lot of different kinds of companies that are coming up, and the focus has been not towards satisfying the indigenous capability that India as a country requires. So that's first and foremost, but also towards working on technology that can actually compete with global players and be world beating in a sense. So I think that's broadly the trends that we are seeing.
Thanks, Awais. Meanwhile, Neha, I think she just joined, so let me introduce Neha. Welcome to this panel, Neha. So Neha
Hi.
is the co-founder and CEO of Astro. Neha holds a PhD from Texas A&M University and a master's from Indian Institute of Science in Aerospace Engineering. She did a bachelor's of engineering in electronics and communication from Rajasthan University. So welcome to the panel, Neha, along with Awais and Srinath. So we are just going around trying to hear out what you are seeing in space tech globally as a sector as well as in India. So Awais just shared his thoughts. So Srinath, want to hear your first thoughts on what's changing really globally in space tech as well as in India.
Sure. So I think so. Thanks for having me on the panel. I think your question is actually super broad, but also about something that is changing so much.
You have 60 seconds, Srinath,
As
so you'll have to
sure,
make it simpler for
right.
us.
So understood. So that's what I was trying to do. That's a broad question in 60 seconds. So no, I think people have taken space seriously, mostly from a business standpoint, right? I think technology has always been there, but I think this focus on commercialization, the focus on private companies actually owning up entire missions end to end, I think that is actually now starting to become a reality globally. And that is also percolating through almost all countries. I think there is a serious initiative from the private side to be mission owners as opposed to just being probably a vendor to a particular space agency. And with the policy change that even Awais touched upon coming up in India here, I think that's also translating very well to India. So basically, money has started to flow. It's becoming privatized, and I think a lot of players are going to have an opportunity to be a part of entire missions in space tech. So I think that is the biggest change that has happened in the last decade or so.
Interesting. Thanks, Srinath. I'll get back to you. There are a few questions I have based on what you and Avad said. Neha, what according to you is changing? Again, a broad question, but what are you seeing? Because from Astrom's point of view, you're looking at space completely from a consumer application, a completely different viewpoint. Right? So, what are you seeing globally? What's changing? We do see that quite a bit is happening. There's a lot of activity picking up, but both at a sector level globally as well as in India, what do you see is changing?
So, I of course agree with what Shrikant has said. But I would like to bring in one point which I'm really excited about, which is space becoming mainstream. A lot of the businesses are actually trying to use space tech or space data, for making their business better, and that's like really a very good sign. So in the last few months, I've come across so many companies who are helping banks, insurance companies, businesses, to do better using space tech. And I think that's kind of the inflection point which will make sure that money keeps going into this industry and the industry keeps growing. So I think that's what I'm excited about.
Interesting, and that goes back to Srinath. I think the point you were making before, right? There is so, and I was looking at your points too. This looks like a. It's not like a one single thing. It's like a It's like a multi-sided action that's happening. There's on the one hand, there's awareness. Awareness of space has always been there. Excitement has always been there. There is technology catching up, and people figuring out consumer applications. And then there are probably enough talent now coming in. So it seems like a sort of like a wave, perfect wave of sorts, right, coming through. But let's switch gears a little bit here. And so when we say India, and right now the whole focus for the NPC summit this year itself is building world class from India. So when we say, does Indian private and government sector from in the space sector, do we have a global play? What do you even mean by that? What are the components that make up a space play, right? And I think that would be useful to understand from you when we talk about space tech. It's too broad. What could be, what are some of the components that we should be looking at? What do you see? Because you do this day in day out. So Srinath, you want to go first and just give us like a bird's eye view of when we say space tech, what does it actually mean?
Sure. So quickly, you can divide it into three big categories, right? Stuff that's actually happening in space itself, and then there is stuff that's happening on the ground to either collect the data or whatever process. People, basically, the real people who are responsible for first of all having put something in space, the end users of whatever is being done in space, and then you have the bridge people who are taking stuff from Earth and putting it in space, right? And so I think actually in this panel we have representatives from all places.
Yeah. That's why I'm very excited about this panel, right? I know nothing of space except for what I read, but this is quite exciting to be here.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay. So I think that's basically what it means to say, okay, so that's what when we generally say space tech, at least it covers this. Now, each of these areas you can further break it down and talk about, okay, when you're talking about going from one place to another, what kind of transportation, just like ground transportation, space transportation is its own separate topic. And once you go to space, okay, are you going there for taking pictures? Are you going there for bouncing signals between 2 points on the planet? Are you going there for all of these new exotic applications that are coming up today because space is becoming more reachable? Of course, finally, you have to again come back to ground because all of us are here and we are all using space to do something. But eventually, people, at least today, we are all still on planet Earth. So, processing that, actually distributing it to the end user, people who actually want the image, people who actually want the data. So that's basically what I think space tech could be broken into at a very high level.
Yeah, and I think we're all here on this call because of what's happening somewhere up there in space, right? So,
Right.
so otherwise, what do you think? What do you, according to you, are the components when we say space tech?
Yeah, so I think Sheena touched upon broadly how the ecosystem itself is shaping up. There are the applications that need to be used. There needs to be some sort of a logistics layer to moving things from one place to the other, and things that are there as infrastructure that's providing the backend to all of this, right? But as ingredients in terms of what makes this happen, that we have seen broadly around as well. One is there needs to be regulatory certainty regardless of where you're doing it from, and there needs to be some sort of international collaboration because space as its whole nature is global. Then once you put a satellite up there, it doesn't really see national borders. It keeps orbiting the globe. So everywhere having sort of regulatory certainty that this is what you need to do to be able to go up in space and operate it in a responsible manner, not leaving debris behind and things like those is going to be one critical ingredient to making sure this keeps growing. The second is access to funding. The nature of space tech is such that except on the downstream side of things, you need to have enough funding to get you to a point where you can deploy your infrastructure, prove your technology, and then build a sustainable business out of that, which means that in most cases around the world, you see the government themselves providing grant funding initially. That's something that needs to come up here as well. If a lot more companies need to come up and a lot more technologies need to be proven. And thirdly, in the initial stages, getting customers for space tech is it's not as easy as a software startup wherein you have a ready pool of customers to use it, right? In space technology, in some cases, you would need to educate your customers in terms of what's needed. So government being a customer at the initial stages and actually having the ecosystem grow would be the important thing to do as well. So I would say apart from how the ecosystem itself is there, the ingredients needed to grow it, regulatory certainty, access to grant funding or equity funding in the initial stages from the government, as well as customer support and buying of the solutions that are already there is what make up the ingredients for making it take off.
Interesting. So you touched upon a very interesting point, which is regulatory, right? Which brings to and the other point about government being the primary customer. So Neha, what do you think? What are the key components? Do you see any components that's been missed out? Do you and also let us know what you think from a prioritization point of view, right? If there is one thing we all have to focus on, is there something like that? Like, should we all focus when we say us? I mean, as a country, is the regulatory thing the biggest burden? Is it the logistics, or is it creating use cases? What do
So,
you think?
yeah, I think I would go back to your first question, which was about what are the components or what makes space tech, right? I think for me, that boundary of space and the technology we use on ground, that boundary is very blurred. And the reason I say that is because I think we will see a lot of dual use, and dual use I don't mean defense and commercial, but I mean like terrestrial and space. Technology actually merging. That's kind of what we are seeing in our field as well. So, for example, we are in the field of 5G and broadband, and you will see a lot of the technologies which are used on towers actually going on to the satellites, and in the future also the satellite networks actually merging with the terrestrial network in a very very big way. So from my perspective, I think there are two kinds of space technology. One sort of space technology which is really specific to space, maybe that is propulsion in some respect. Um, and then there is this other technology, what Aways does or what I do. All of that stuff is so common, the payloads and everything else. It's like there will be no boundary, as such, we could call space tech. So I think a lot of the dual use companies in space technology will emerge, including us. And that's also a positive side, because that will lead to a lot of the risks to be removed from the industry. So that's kind of answer to your first question. And the second part is you asked that, what is the most important ingredient, to make sure that the space tech is successful, right, in India. I think the most important ingredient is funding, and funding, hands down, is the most important ingredient, even more than the regulation, I would say. And what I think is that seed funding, pre-Series A, Series A funding, Series B funding, all of these ecosystems have to be evolved. And we need to support VCs in terms of due diligence, and basically making sure that they understand what they're investing in, and kind of create an ecosystem where more and more investments can be made by VCs into this market, especially space tech and deep tech space tech, or to be very specific.
Interesting. So all of you raised interesting points, right? One is the whole technology aspect of it, right? You call it logistics, call it hardware, software, and then there is a whole regulatory aspect of it, and there is a whole financing aspect of it, and there's a fourth one which I'll get to shortly, which is consumer use cases. Even though, like I said, it's ironical, we have the biggest use case right now on this panel, the internet, right? But so at this point, given the three of you are in three different quadrants of the space tech, so to say. Do you see that you're a very small minority operating where you talk to investors, they don't understand, you talk to consumers, they don't understand, you talk to enterprises, they don't understand? Do you see that on your day-to-day journey, or is it that everyone gets it 100%? Srinath, you're more on the hardware side, right?
So I think Neha said that well in I think for one of the previous questions, right? I think it's becoming mainstream. So that itself is helping it look
what's changing?
less international.
So what's changing? Why is it becoming? What's changing in the last? So 10 years back, there was not much of discussion about space. Today, there is quite a bit of discussion. So what changed here?
I think success story is probably out of the US on privatizing it, money flowing into it because people are able to construct business models out of it. So once it becomes a business, more and more people are actually involved, right? It percolates through the rest of the parts of a typical commercial ecosystem. You have more vendors, you have more bankers, you have more lawyers, you have more regulatory people. All of them start getting involved in a little, larger manner, and that is basically spreading the word across as well. So I think that's where things actually started. I used to feel quite lonely, I think, when we started off in 2017. Not anymore. Now I think definitely there is, at least people know about stuff like this. The government has directly, announced initiatives for this. So it doesn't feel very lonely anymore, to be honest.
Awesome. Congratulations on that transformation. So let's get to a couple of points which I wanted to cover, right? One is, I think all of you touched upon that there is this whole use cases, whether it's consumers or businesses, the ability to imagine use case. So there is obviously the technology and all of that. And as you touched upon it, right? Government as a primary customer. Are we seeing any use cases which can help, for example, the audience listening over here tonight, right? So are there consumer use cases that you think should be the focus of space so that it builds people's imagination? Do you see that defense is one, people get it, right? But outside of defense, and I think Neha, you're working on something, and otherwise I want to hear your thoughts too. What are the consumer use cases that are coming up, according to you, which are adding to that fourth quadrant? Are there any?
Sure. Okay, sure. Let me go first then.
Yeah.
So, one, there is the consumer. When you say consumer, it could mean two things, right? One is directly consumers using it on their phones or on a day-to-day basis. Now, if you look at Google Maps, that is GPS satellite essentially giving you access to the maps. When you shift to the satellite imagery view, you can actually see how things are in real life. So that is, I think, one of the best examples you can give as to how space technology has permeated everyone's phones. I don't think there's anyone with a smartphone that does not use maps today. Earth observation still has a lot of way to go there, where anyone can just dial up an app or a website and then search for what they want, and it gives you an insight. For example, if someone wants to search what is the health quality of this lake in Bangalore city, and then satellite imagery analyze it and gives the number. We're still some ways away from that, but where we are is a lot of organizations are increasingly looking towards using satellite imagery as one of the sources to make better business decisions, make their processes more efficient, save money. I'll take a few examples, right? If it's an agricultural company that has millions of acres of land spread across the world, now they want to know what's happening in all those areas at a very regular basis. They can't do that with people. They can't do that even with drones. They can't do that with IoT sensors because it becomes a logistical nightmare. So, as a first line of defense, what you need is satellite imagery that tells you if things are going wrong, and then you can, as a consumer, go there and focus your efforts on the area that actually needs solving. So, that could be one example. We're increasingly looking at a lot of these. Companies trying to curb their own ESG impact. So, say there is a factory or an industry that is leading to emissions into the air, but they want to measure what their impact is, but also use those measurements to actually make better decisions. So that's what we are seeing. Although there are a lot of these companies yet who need education on how to actually use this and convert this, but you're also seeing these software platforms that can come in and make it easy for them. So I would say at least from 5 years ago, we have seen, like, with the barrage of news that's coming as to this is what satellite imagery could do, this is what communications can do, this is what IoT M2M connectivity from space can do. Many of these large enterprises which would have otherwise not looked at it are starting to look at it. A lot of these startups are coming up, like SatSure or Kawa, that are making it easy for the end users as well. And so I think things are changing that way, from it being only a government use case to enterprises now using it, and eventually it will reach a point where anyone can whip up an app and use it as well.
Definitely. I think, Nia, you touched upon it before, but can you give some examples of consumer side use cases that you are?
Yeah, sure. So I think in my mind, the success of space tech penetrating the commercial market is when the consumer doesn't even realizes that it is from space. So I'll give you a very good example of that. DTH TV, right? Everywhere from rural to urban, people have these dishes at their homes. They're getting TVs through that, and nobody actually even thinks that this is coming from space, from the satellite. Same with Google Maps, the
Yeah.
example that Awais, gave. It's I think the success is because the consumer doesn't care, by the way. The consumer doesn't care if it's coming from space or ground or underground. They don't care. They care about the service that they're getting. And if we focus on that and if we make a value proposition towards that, then it's a success, whether the consumer knows it or not. And that's kind of what will happen in the SATCOM market, I believe, because a lot of the towers, which are in the remote areas, would be connected with LEO constellations. There would be a lot of the traffic, telecom traffic, which maybe in areas where the congestion is more, will be actually going through the satellites. There will be people. There are a lot of companies who are now doing direct to phone connections, like from space, giving telecom connectivity directly to phone. So there are going to be a lot more handsets which are going to be dual use, which means that they will be able to get connectivity from ground networks and also from space at the same time, depending on where they are. So all of that is going to happen, and all of that is going to change our lives. But I think it will become normal for us to use more space tech. That's what I wanted to say.
That's quite powerful. Thanks for sharing that, Nia. Srinath, what do you think?
So I'll touch
Any use
upon
cases
some
that you could
new
you could
applications.
yeah.
Yeah, so stuff that both Neha and Awais spoke about is what is, I would say, mainstream in some sense, right? And perfectly valid. I heard about a couple of other companies, so just wanted to share that there is this company, I think, out of Japan called ALE, and they were trying to do artificial meteor showers from space. Basically, I think it's like going up and throwing a bunch of debris that on its way down burns up completely. So they're not actually adding to the debris problem. But think of it as, like, say, instead of fireworks for a sporting event or IPL match or something, just imagine doing that for an event, right? So literally the entire country gets to see fireworks in one shot. Of course, canceling for cloud coverage and all that other stuff, but at least a large
Very
part of the
interesting.
country would see it in one shot. So that's a very interesting application, right? And now
Yeah.
also seeing people who used to do microgravity experiments in space are now actually using it as a platform to make certain manufacturing processes which that have to be done in zero gravity, actually done in modules that are probably going to be there for 6 months and then deorbit. So I think the pharma industry, a couple of them, I've heard from them that they're trying to use that for certain protein molecule synthesization or whatever. Heard people trying to store data in space. Apparently, the cost of cooling large server farms, which have data, is biggest cost of running a data farm. If you can align your satellites away from the sun, I think it's probably okay to get coding for free or almost for free.
That's quite fascinating, really. That's crazy. Yeah.
And of course, that's where the question of, okay, but will I get my real latency that low that it will not make it, whether the user shouldn't perceive the difference, like Neha said, right? Whether it's coming from a server somewhere in Norway or above Norway in space, it shouldn't matter. And I think for certain applications, that kind of bandwidth is probably enough. Right? Can you stream 4K data on Netflix? Probably not. But can you stream a song on Spotify? Probably yes. So that kind of differentiation is actually starting to already happen. So yeah, I mean it's getting stronger than just imaging and communication. So that's actually what's the more exciting part for me. You might have also heard about Tom Cruise going to space to shoot movies. I mean, this is exactly what it is going mainstream, right? Space is really going mainstream.
And that's a switch, right? As long as it was government and defense, they're very government defense or these are some sectors, right, which probably fueled the origin, much like how internet was fueled by defense departments first. But then consumer applications started coming in, and you have your fireworks or showers or whatever, right, you're coming from space. I think that's an encouraging sign that people are able to actually match up the technology available to new imaginations, right, that the consumers, citizens, or even businesses have. I think that's the quite exciting part. That seems to be however it started, right? There will always be a few pioneers, but however it started, that seems to be the big catalyst over here. The space tech, as you mentioned, has always existed for the last 50, 60 years. So that's quite interesting. But let me now touch upon the raw nerve. I mean, we talked about funding and regulation, right? So, being in India, trying to build these teams, how do you get talent to build all of that? All this takes a lot of engineering talent, product management talent, design thinkers. I mean, most of the audience will be looking at it all into one of these profiles. Other entrepreneurs. Are you seeing a challenge because you need an excellent team outside of funding and outside of, I mean, you even to come up with some of these use cases, you need bright minds thinking creatively. Is that something that three of you have faced as an issue in the past, or is talent still a persistent bottleneck for you guys? Otherwise, you want to go first? What do you see?
Yeah, I don't think that availability of talent in India is an issue for space technology. We have ISRO, where people have been working on these technologies for years and decades, and that amount of experience and expertise, if we don't use it, then who will? ISRO has been one of the top space agencies for quite a few decades now. So I don't think there's a dearth of expertise, experience, and talent that we need to go out and get. But also even freshers that are coming out from certain institutes, whether it's Indian Institute of Science and Technology, which is space and technology, which is focused on space tech. We can bring in people from there and do it. There are some places where we could not find talent because that's something that hadn't been done in the country before. But that's not something to say that we can't do that here. As a virtue of a startup, you will need to pick up things that no one has done before, and you will need to figure them out as you go. So I think in terms of the curiosity and the kind of talent that you need to do that, you have complete availability here in India. I think we have an advantage in that segment rather than a disadvantage compared to a lot of other people.
So when you talk about talent, I want to split it between these multiple roles, right? There are technologists, software and hardware developers, then there are design thinkers, there are product managers, there are several roles. What is your broad split, or is it mostly all engineering team for you?
I think look, everything else from a software perspective, whether it's designers or product managers or MLD AI engineers, we've had so many software startups that have come up just in India, building world class startups. So that's I don't think there's a dearth of talent there. the cost going up is another issue, but I don't think there's a lack of talent on that side. It's space technology, which is a little bit of a niche, but even on that side, we have ISRO, DRDO, a whole lot of other organizations where people have experience. So there's no dearth of talent in any of those sectors.
Interesting. Neha, since you are operating from a different quadrant, the consumer side, what is your talent? Is there a talent conundrum for you? Is it mostly technology talent, or if you had
So
to
first of all,
recruit, what would
Shrikant,
your
we
team
don't
be?
operate. Yeah. So we don't operate in consumer side. Just wanted to clarify that. We
Yeah,
are
yeah.
mostly a B2B company right now. And just to touch upon, I think it's really evident from the kind of panel you have right now. I mean, these are two young guys, Shrikant and Aves. I'm a bit older, but the young guys are the future. That's what I believe in. And our company's motto is very different. We don't really care how much experience you have, where you got your experience, what you studied. If you're smart, you're ready to learn, you can come and join us. That's kind of what we do. We have a good process of identifying good people, and we work really hard. But at the end of the day, if you get people who are motivated towards what you're doing, I think that makes all the difference. And especially the young guys, who are extremely motivated by what they're doing. They're not just doing it for money, but they're doing it because they want to do it. So that's kind of the important part. So from a talent perspective, I think young guys and girls are the ones that actually move companies like us. That's what I would say.
Interesting. Srinath, you had, as you shared, a journey from fairly lonely 2017 to now. So, and I think would it be wrong to guess that your team is primarily hardware and software engineers, or do you have? Am I wrong? What is your team spread typically like, and what's your talent?
So team spread is typically, I think, so we have 80 people in the team today. I think about 60 of them are in core engineering and testing and design. The remaining of them are helping with operation strategy, with accounting. So when you have hardware, you have to manage your inventory, a lot of these things, and particularly in the space tech, you need to carefully track. There's a lot of documentation that goes with tracking hardware. So people are focused. At least about 20 people of them are focused on just that part. So yeah, I mean, I think you mean Neha told that I'm young, so thank you, Neha. But usually in the team, I feel like I'm the oldest person at 36. So, and I guess in space you can get away being a 36-year-old and still claiming that you're young. So anyway,
Oh, then I
I think
take back.
the point is
I
actually
take back.
okay.
I think as a sector, it's so young that you could be 60 and still be doing something in space. Right? So quite
Personally.
interesting, right?
But the
So
interesting thing is the sandwich, right? Because I think what Neha brought out, I perfectly agree with in terms of the young people who are actually motivated by something more than money to actually achieve. You kind of have to find a way to sandwich them with people that Away spoke about in the beginning, which is the people from ISRO who have already been there, done that for almost
yeah,
90% of the technology that we are developing, right? I think that mix, if we can get that balance right, and that's one of the things that we are constantly striving for at Agnicol as well, right? Because so that you don't reinvent the wheel in the excitement of trying to do something new. You shouldn't be doing something that everyone else has cracked, but just because you're not aware, you're doing it again from the very beginning. So that is something to avoid. But if you can pair these two groups together, I think there is a wonderful opportunity to create a lot of good stuff in India.
interesting. So I have a couple of questions, right, from the audience over here. Which got our attention while we were talking. One is from Raja Suresh. So in summary, his question translates to: Are we doing enough to talk about space technologies and what we just talked today in childhood in school curriculums, or should we do more about it? So what do you think? Should we do more, or is enough? I mean, how did you guys get into space? Right? Is it because of childhood curriculum, or is there something that you picked up later? And hence the question comes back to: if we have to make India and we have to build world-class product from India in space tech, what do you think? Are we doing enough from teaching about space and space technologies and what happens over there to the children of today? Neha, you want to go first? You have a thought on it?
Yeah, actually, education is extremely important. So we need more hands-on education, I would say, in the country. Which is more training, more, internship with startups or big companies, which are real internship, not just paper internships. I think that is probably an important thing, for us to do. And one of the other thing is that earlier, young people who were interested in space only had ISRO, to look for
Yes.
internships and jobs. But now there are so many companies, so many research institutes who are focused on space. So there is a lot more opportunity, and I think schools in general should allow young students to actually, go and do internship with companies, and that can really, I would say, scale the skill levels. It's one
Yes.
thing to study things in the books, but it's another thing to actually implement something and feel good about it. So that's what I would say. One thing we could do to promote more space tech in education.
Shreya, do you see any of that happening at school level today? Do you have any examples of schools which are doing that, or is this an area of work?
I think it's area to be worked upon a little more. Of course, every school has some sort of an astronomy club or something like that, where
Hmm.
at least you have like a hobby telescope and you are able to look into the sky. I think I have done that myself when I went to school, but that was not the only reason why I got fascinated. I just grew
Yeah.
up as an being. I think every child that I've met. There is this. Have you met really young kids? You know that there is this. I want to be an astronaut has always been a thing,
Yeah.
right? And at some point, I think the system manages to kill it quite well. I don't know
Yeah.
why,
Yeah.
but I think if we can just nurture that for a little longer in schools, that should actually really help. I the interesting part I think now is ISRO has actually come up with stuff like actually putting merchandise out and stuff, right? Which, for example, say NASA has been doing so well for so long,
Yeah.
right? And that kind of stuff will actually, at least in India, I'm saying, it's going to excite a lot of people. I mean, it's very trivial stuff, but actually these things make a difference when people are actually trying to be excited about it. The more you see it, the more parents see it, the more they're going to encourage their kids to actually explore that as a career option, right? Particularly when you're young and you're still in the age when you're listening to your parents.
Yeah.
So I think at that level things have to continue. But yeah, work to be done. But I'm seeing steps in the right direction is what I'm trying to say.
Wonderful. That's great. Otherwise, what are you seeing any steps in that direction,
Yeah, look, I
specifically
think,
from children? Yeah.
yeah, all of us have seen in our textbooks, I think, stories about
Yeah.
space and what ISRO has done and what Vikram Sarabhai. But what that doesn't translate to is a couple of things. It doesn't translate to how it actually impacts people. So I think that bridge of education is there as to, okay, this is a really cool thing to do, but what is the impact of you actually getting into that and then converting that into something that people down here on Earth can use? And the second is a tangible pathway towards being there. A lot of people think that they need to do aerospace engineering or space tech enechnineering for them to get into
Yeah.
space, which is not the case. Regardless of the field that you're in, whether it's math, whether it's physics, whether it's mechanical engineering or anything else, making sure that people know what are the pathways to be actually doing work in space technology. That's not still clear. As Srinath was mentioning, right? Almost everyone as a kid is fascinated with space, but somewhere along the way that gets lost. And that is something that needs to be there. And I think that's changing as well. It's not that it's been the same since a couple of decades. For example, I remember in 2019 when ISRO was trying to land Chandrayaan. That was happening at around 2 a.m. in the night. The amount of people and families that I
Yeah.
knew that would have otherwise staying up to watch that, that
Absolutely.
number was mind-boggling. It was also sort of a winds of change as to people actually being invested in space. So things are moving in the right direction. So the more we can talk about the things that are actually being done, but also how it's impacting life here on Earth, that will help people see that this is the space to work in. And the other is, just success stories coming out of it, with SpaceX doing that, with a lot of Indian companies not doing it. If people see that, okay, these were people from, my town, my state that have actually, contributed to this mission and done this, that gives them that. So bringing that all together would be good to do. Yeah, we're moving towards that, but still a lot more to do.
Interesting. So that builds the transition from watching Saturn rings or craters on the moon from a telescope in school to having these tangible pathways. Because I think that's an excellent point, right? All of us have done it. I have done it. Everyone has seen those. You get very excited for a day, and then a decade or two passes by and you've done nothing about it, right? So I think that's a very excellent point, all three of you, that, and I think that could be, while we definitely talk about schools, which again is putting the responsibility on governments or the educational institutions, the goal is to create these tangible pathways that whatever skill sets you have, there are a bunch of things that you can do. You don't, like, thinking space and thinking wearing a suit and going to astronaut is not just space, right? And I think probably it's also a wrong imagination built, because how many people do go into space versus all the work that's happening, right? So it's quite exciting. I think we covered those points today. I think we are at the close of the panel. So one, we definitely talked about imagination from a consumer point of view, and by consumer I mean both the end consumers as well as businesses if they're customers. Funding definitely, and we are seeing, and from what I understand from you, you're seeing a change in that, because now there are applications, non-defense applications, non-governmental applications that are kind of coming in. And I think the third important part is the whole talent pool, and part of the talent pool, and these are not independent quadrants in that sense, right? One feeds onto the other. Definitely trying to, and I think I will be, if you guys, for example, start up an educational course to tell me what I can do, I'll be the first one to sign up, and I'm sure a lot of people would be signing up for that too, right? What can you do, and break that down into those pathways, those journeys. I think that's going to be one of the most powerful add-ons and learnings from this panel, and I'm sure as the people are listening to it, somebody is thinking of it. So let's hope to see that in the next 1 year itself, right? So I think we are at the end of the panel. I'm just trying to, that's one last question. I know we kind of short time, but one quick question from an investor confidence point of view. Yeah.
Shrikant, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are out of time, and I hate to disrupt the panel.
Sure.
Yeah.
I will share
You
the
wrap it
question
up.
to you, and then Priyank will answer
Yes.
the question to you later, right? Thank you so much, Srinath. Thank you so much, Neha. And thank you so much, Avais, for coming in. Look forward to connecting with you soon. I think we have covered very interesting set of points. I hope it's been very beneficial for everyone. It's been extremely beneficial for me, and I will reach out to you, honestly, because I want
you,
to
Shrikant.
do what we are telling the school children to do. Right? Have a good day. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.